Kamali, taking you through some of the things people are talking about and some of the stuff they're sharing around the world on Newsfeed today. A law change in the United States brings abortion back into the headlines.
She's brilliant. And that's what drives me.
Hashtag My Mum trends in Australia after an emotional press conference from the leader of the opposition. Google becomes the latest tech firm to realize its users' data should be kept more private. And today's Animals Doing Stuff is one of the cutest yet. And top of our newsfeed, a woman's right to choose. A controversial decision by the US state of Georgia has added further fuel to a fire that's been burning in America for decades. Here's Jacob with the detail.
The state of Georgia's new heartbeat law is one of the most restrictive in the US. It makes abortion illegal once a fetal heartbeat can be detected. That can be as early as 6 weeks and before many women even know they're pregnant.
The Life Act is very simple, but also very powerful. A declaration that all life has value, that all life matters, and that all life is worthy of protection.
It led to immediate condemnation.
We are preparing with our local attorneys, with our national attorneys, with our coalition partners, a comprehensive challenge to the many ways that this bill is unconstitutional and violates the fundamental constitutional rights of women in this country.
And that backlash is just what anti-abortion activists and conservative lawmakers across the country want, something to invigorate their cause.
There's just, I think, a feeling of energy among abortion opponents that this is our opportunity after all of these years to finally go to the Supreme Court with these laws and get them to overturn Roe versus Wade.
And the Supreme Court is exactly where their challenge is expected to end up. America's top court currently consists of a conservative majority that includes President Donald Trump's appointees Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. So the worry among pro-abortionists is that the 9 justices may reconsider Roe versus Wade. That ruling, handed down in 1973, established a woman's right to an abortion.
I understand, like the others have said, that some oppose this legislation. I realize that some may challenge it in the court of law. But our job is to do what is right, not what is easy. We are called to be strong and courageous. And we will not back down. We will always continue to fight for life.
And Kemp would be forgiven for thinking the highest court in the US is more than likely in his corner.
Now, the leader of Australia's opposition, Bill Shorten, gave an emotional tribute to his mum after a newspaper there called the Daily Telegraph used her to score points against him. Now, the paper wrote a piece which said that Shorten had deliberately omitted key parts of his mum's life story so he could appear like a scrappy fighter. He responded to the journalists who wrote the editorial with this.
She came back and she did other things. Do you know that my mum wrote the book on education and law in Australia? Brilliant. She's brilliant. And that's what drives me. She went back to Monash and taught. You know, I saw a pretty bloody lazy editorial. I didn't read it all because there's only so much time in your day and you can't afford to waste it on the rubbish. Said she achieved her dream. Who do some people in News Corp or some, and it's not all the journalists, I make that very clear, who do some of these lazy people think they are? That because they think that I explained myself at Q&A on a Monday night, that they play gotcha about your life story, more importantly my mum's. I've spoken about my mum at length. I choose to give you that last bit of the battle of her time at the bar because my mum would want me to say to older women in Australia, just because you've got grey hair, just because you didn't go to a special private school, just because you don't go to the right clubs, just because you're not part of some backslapping boys club, doesn't mean you should give up.
Well, that speech led to the hashtag #MyMum, and people have been sharing their own stories about the sacrifices their mums made. Now, this one says that my mum was working class. She was a nurse who raised her kids, then went back to university and now cares for his father. Another says my mum, married at 16, fled an abusive relationship, was a rock for her family, beat cancer twice and never stopped smiling. Well, this one talks about how Shorten's speech highlights just how much wasted female brilliance there is in Australia. All right, let's take a look at some of the other things that caught our eye on social media. South Africa is holding national elections and people have been posting pictures of their left thumbs marked with ink to show they cast their ballot. The ruling African National Congress is leading in the polls. After the outcry, a good outcome. This woman, nurse Jessica Anderson, broke the London Marathon record for a nurse running in uniform, but because the Guinness World Records are old-fashioned, officials wouldn't recognise her achievement as she was wearing scrubs, not a dress. Now, pics started appearing under the hashtag #WhatNurses and Guinness has now agreed to include her in the records book. Well done, Nurse Anderson. And footage of this little fella getting his dance on has gone viral, as you can imagine it would. His name is Ahmed. He lost his leg after stepping on a landmine in Afghanistan. Now he's able to stand and dance beautifully, I'm sure you'll agree, all thanks to a prosthetic. Good on you, Ahmed. Now, people who drive for two of the biggest ride-hailing firms in the world have gone on strike for 24 hours, demanding better wages and employment conditions. But part of the problem is they're technically not employees. Liz explains.
Ride-hailing apps have revolutionised the way we travel. A recent study suggests the number of users will reach nearly 540 million worldwide in the next 2 years. According to Statista, revenue in the US alone is expected to top $18 billion in 2019. But drivers have had enough.
I want better earnings. I want them to acknowledge we have a big problem.
Uber and Lyft drivers in the US, as well as parts of the UK, Australia and South America, are striking for one day. They're demanding better working conditions and increased pay. Many drivers say when you add in gas, vehicle maintenance, insurance and other costs, it's tough to make a living.
Well, people work different numbers of hours, but increasingly because of the wage cuts, drivers are driving longer and longer hours, and it's getting harder and harder for them to make ends meet.
The protests come days before Uber lists on the New York Stock Exchange. It could be valued at more than $90 billion. Uber says drivers are at the heart of its service. Whether it's more consistent earnings, stronger insurance protection, or fully funded 4-year degrees for drivers or their families. While Lyft says drivers' hourly earnings have increased over the last 2 years, they earn over $20 per hour. Despite their popularity, the ride-hailing apps are still losing money. And with drivers demanding a bigger piece of the pie, something will have to give.
Okay, around the world now, some other stories you need to know this Wednesday. Now, the New York Times has published an investigation into President Donald Trump's tax returns, and if you like the guy, look away now. The article details how Trump lied about, manipulated and inflated his worth for decades. He ran for office by saying he was a billionaire businessman who could easily run a country. Well, it turns out he actually lost more than $1 billion in the 80s and squandered a very healthy inheritance he got from his landlord father, Fred. The Times piece is based on a source with inside knowledge of Trump's tax filings between 1985 and 1994. Now, Democrats are currently trying to get his most recent tax information, but Trump, breaking a tradition that presidents have maintained for 40 years, has refused to make them public. The president claims he can't because they're under audit. That's also a lie. The hashtag Trump taxes is trending. It's reported that police in the Brazilian city of Rio have broken their own record for killing people. Officers killed 434 people in the first 3 months of 2019. That's more than the 368 killed in the same period last year. Now, Brazil's new president is fond of making gun signs with his fingers and campaigned on taking a hard-line approach to crime. Human Rights Watch say that many of these killings by the cops were extrajudicial. The World Health Organization says that more than 34,000 measles cases were reported in Europe in the first 2 months of 2019. That's 3 times the number of cases in 2018. At least 13 people have died across the 42 nations that reported. Governments around the world are doing what they can to contain the outbreaks, with some fining parents who don't vaccinate their children. The WHO listed vaccine hesitancy, the reluctance to immunize, as one of the top 10 health concerns for 2019. Now, there are many reasons why people don't vaccinate. One of the main ones is fear over vaccine safety. Now, this concern is being exacerbated currently by junk science and conspiracy theory being shared online. Tech firms have begun to take action against the hosting of anti-vax content on their platforms. And this was the apocalypse-like moment. A dust storm rolled into the Australian town of Mildura. As you can see, it quickly turned day into night as winds of 60 kilometers an hour blew sand and debris in from the desert. Apparently, it was the worst storm the area has seen in 40 years. And Boris Johnson, a British politician, is being sued for the lies that he told during the campaign for the UK to leave the European Union. It's been reported as a world first, and legal fees have been crowdfunded. The man suing Bojo is Marcus Ball. He alleges that Johnson committed 3 offences of misconduct in public office by claiming that £350 million a week was going to the EU. Ball says that the former Foreign Secretary knowingly propagated that lie that a mythical £350 million a week could instead go to the British NHS. The case is due to be heard in court next week. Now, another tech giant has taken the first step towards increasing the privacy of its users. Google is following Facebook's announcement of last week, and all of this is to try and get ahead of impending government regulation.
Another way we build for everyone is by ensuring that our products are safe and private, and that people have clear, meaningful choices around their data. We strongly believe that privacy and security are for everyone, not just a few. Our goal is to build a more helpful Google for everyone. And when we say helpful, we mean giving you the tools to increase your knowledge, success, health, and happiness.
And in today's Animals Doing Stuff, we've got one of the nicest wee viral clips we've ever had, really. Now, millions have watched this dog removing a usurper from its prize spot in the bed. As you'll see, it kindly brings a little pillow for the pup to sit on, grabs the pup, puts it on the pillow, and then assumes its rightful spot next to the human. It's kind of, but cheeky, pretty much like Newsfeed. Do from the Newsfeed team. Reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. You'll find me at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Follow, subscribe and add. See you again tomorrow.